97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan, powered by InsideTheBirds.com.
I think we have the ability to do something really special with this group, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It dropped this morning. Every Thursday morning it drops, of course. And Adam Caplan joins us every Thursday here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill on a Thursday along with Hunter Brody here. And Adam, appreciate you jumping on. How you doing today?
Guys, good to talk to you. Yeah, we dropped our show this morning at 6 a.m. Eastern. We drop it every Monday and Thursday at 6 a.m. We appreciate everybody's support. And look, there's this show that we just dropped. I mean, there was so much going on, as you guys know, with the three Eagle players going on the COVID reserve list and the Marquise Goodwin opt-out. And just, there's certain things that you would not expect to happen, but they certainly have happened.
Yeah, Adam, let's start with the Marquise Goodwin opt-out because it's not, to my eyes, it's not that he was going to be some, number one receiver, but to me it's the fact that it gives you options that are no longer there, and now you're looking at who is left in training camp, and Goodwin could have been a huge part of that competition.
Yeah, here's the reason, Josh, I think it's impactful. They have my understanding was that he was probably going to line up at the Z position. That is where Deshaun Jackson lines up. So he's going to be a backup. And Jalen Reagor has already learned that position. So I don't know how much he would have played, but here's why it could be impactful. The Eagles now only have two veterans on the roster. Both are coming off significant surgery. Alshon Jeffrey, of course, with his Lisfranc franc surgery, and Deshaun Jackson having the groin surgery. I'm told that it was actually both sides were fixed last year when he decided to have the surgery. So he's fine. I'm told he's doing great. Alshon, we talked about on our show, and we gave a pretty good update. My belief is that he'll be back before midseason. As a matter of fact, my sense is he probably will not start the regular season on the active. Actually, it would be reserve PUP. He's on the active PUP now. I strongly suspect, unless he has a setback, that Jeffrey's going to play before we probably were expecting. I'm kind of surprised with what I've heard the last 6 weeks, but I knew he was running and doing well, but his rehab has gone well, and he's going to really help the football team this season.
What do you think that means for someone like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside? Yeah,
so, Hunter, here's the way I look at it. In September, Jeff Mosher and I talk about this on today's show. So the way we see it lining up in September, we just don't know exactly when Jeffrey's going to be ready. But in my reporting on this, I just feel like he'll be back before the first 6 weeks are up, because that's if he was on reserve PUP, he would have to miss the first 6 weeks. So at the X position, which is Jeffrey's position, I think you're going to have a real shot to see Reagor and Arcega-Whiteside splitting time there, and obviously Deshaun Jackson is to the Z. And when they go three receivers, they're still going to be primarily what we call 12 personnel, two tight ends and two wide receivers. And then when they're in their three wide package, which typically will be on passing situations on third down, Greg Ward will be their slot receiver. And that's pretty much it. We just don't know enough about Hightower and Watkins, but Reagor is going to play a lot. I mean, this is, I'd said, and we'll see if I'm right about this, that actually said on this station, this segment, 3 or 4 weeks ago, that I believe Reagor will lead the Eagle receivers in receiving. I still think that has a chance to happen.
I know Reagor was telling the media that he's been really studying the playbook so he can learn all the positions. It really seems like that he has a head for the game of football, that his mind is really in the right place to be able to get up to speed with the playbook.
Yeah, I think Jalen Reagor is a pretty sharp kid. I had heard that he did really well in the virtual program. And the knock on him was some drops last season. I think he had 7 from receiver coaches that I talked to around the NFL. That was one thing. And by the way, the drops for Reagor, pretty much all the same. They were on slot screens or short area passes where he was trying to get upfield. So, look, he's been a quick learner, and Reagor confirmed what Mosher had said, about 6 weeks ago, that he was going to learn 3 positions. He's learned 2 already. So we'll see how he does there. And Jalen Hurts, his media briefing was interesting. He clearly does not want to play more than quarterback, but he's going to. He's going to line up as a quarterback, but it'll be a wildcat quarterback. They're going to have a game plan for him to get on the field, but let's not forget Nate Sudfeld is going to be their number 2 quarterback this season.
Should they sign a veteran wide receiver now that they lost someone like Marquise Goodwin?
Yeah, I know it's funny. We have a message board on Facebook, and I'll be honest, I'm a little bit surprised by this. More often than not, in the responses, our listeners want to just see the kids play. I mean, obviously, Rager and Ortega-Whiteside and Ward and Watkins and Hightower in training camp would just compete for playing time. And they have this kid, Manasseh Bailey, who's a small school player out of Morgan State, but he could flat out fly. And the thing is, with Goodwin being off the roster, they're not going to be missing speed. They're going to have speed. It's just that they will not have Goodwin's experience, and that's the one thing where you talk about having a veteran receiver. It's a little bit dicey, but as I suggest, guys, on our show today, my suggestion would be for the Eagles to go and see in those first 2 weeks of practices, which won't really be until mid-August, just see how these young guys do. If you think they're coming on well, then maybe you don't need a veteran receiver.
Adam Caplan joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline on 97.3 ESPN Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The latest podcast dropped this morning. And Adam, one of the things you guys mentioned on the pod about the receivers is them bringing in Jason Avant. So what kind of impact do you think he could have on these young receivers?
Yeah, so Josh, here's kind of my view of it. He's just there as he's a part of the Bill Walsh Fellowship, and what that is, you're bringing retired players in to coach in training camp. I remember talking to Seth Joyner about it. He actually did that with the Bills many years ago. But with Avant here, he'll be the third receiver coach there. It's Aaron Moorhead is their new receivers coach, and he has an assistant. Jason will just be there, obviously, for the 3 weeks of training camp, and he'll help out. And particularly, I'll tell you what, because he was never really fast. He was strong, physical, and tough, and very smart and savvy. He could really help guys kind of relate to what he went through as a rookie and how he worked his way up the depth chart. I think a little bit of wisdom here certainly will help, and I thought that was a really good move by the Eagles and Doug Peterson to bring another experienced voice onto the coaching roster.
So some big news that was breaking yesterday during Football at 4 with Jeff Mosher was Nate Gerry, Jordan Mailata, and Lane Johnson on that COVID-19 list. Any concerns about those 3 players right now?
No, my understanding on Mailata, Hunter, is that he's going to be okay soon. I can't really confirm whether he did not pass the test. It's just that he's on the reserve list. And then obviously Lane Johnson confirmed that he did not pass the test, says he's going to be good. Now, the players have to miss a minimum of 5 days. The reports about the COVID list, you have to be out 2 to 3 weeks, were not correct. Talking to the league on Wednesday, you got to miss a minimum of 5 days, and then you go from there. So we'll see what happens, but they have to look. I'll tell you what. With Mailata not being in training camp right now and able to get to just be in the meetings there, it's not a big deal. But he needs to be back, and he should be back by the time they start practicing middle of next month, because he needs the reps, guys. Right now, he's probably their top backup offensive tackle, left or right tackle. I think you'll see more of Pryor now playing inside. Of course, he could play tackle because he's 6'7", but right now Pryor's their top backup guard.
What about the importance of Nate Gerry? Because I've seen a lot of people talking about his importance in that linebacker room.
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought I'd say that, but yeah, I mean, when you look at it, look at it. I mean, the lack of experience. He is the elder statesman. Nate Gerry's in his 4th season, the final year of his rookie deal, former safety in college. It's been a good story of development. He's just not a great football player. Jatavis Brown is a guy that they're hoping will come in and compete for playing time. They're basically going to be this season, the way I've heard it, is going to be a 4 linebacker rotation between Edwards, Duke Riley, Brown, and Gerry. Gerry right now is the starter on the outside. Sean Bradley probably will not play much this season other than the special teams. Dante Olson, their hope is he makes the team as a backup middle linebacker, and I don't see Davion Taylor really playing much other than on special teams. He's got to fill out physically. And the thing with Taylor is he's behind other players because he's just not played that much football in recent years. So the Eagles do see him as a nickel linebacker and probably one of their starting nickel linebackers as early as next season.
What do you see out of TJ Edwards? I know he's a very intriguing player, and people were excited for him once they got him undrafted out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, so Hunter, TJ Edwards is a two-down linebacker. He's real physical. He's around 240. That's enough weight to play middle linebacker, and he's a thumper. He could hit. Smart player, and this is a guy that is another yet an undrafted free agent the Eagles have really sort of hit a home run with in terms of him making the team as a rookie. That's a pretty big accomplishment, and he's going to have a real shot to start at middle linebacker. As a matter of fact, right now he's the clear favorite. I don't see anyone else doing it. They just don't have anyone else right now who's ready to play middle linebacker. So he would be the guy for a linebacker core that is clearly well below average.
One of the things you guys have talked about in the Inside the Birds podcast, Adam, is about the fact that the Eagles are not going to run out there with the old school three linebackers all the time. So how does Edwards and the other guys work into a rotation where maybe a lot of times it's only two or one linebacker on the field?
Yeah, they're going to play between 65 and 70% nickel defense, Josh. So it's not a big deal. You're only going to play with two linebackers for the majority of the time. So when they play with two, it's probably going to be a combination of Gary and probably Duke Riley and Jatavis Brown. Now, on base, if they're I don't know how much base they're going to play, but certainly rundowns, Edwards is going to be in there. Short yardage, Edwards is going to be in there because he's just more physical. So it's really not a big deal. When I say he's a starter, it's really how many snaps you play. Who starts anymore really is not a big deal. It's about how many snaps you play, and clearly Edwards will not play a ton of snaps.
Do you expect that teams are going to be making a lot of trades throughout the season because guys might be, having to go on this COVID-19 list? I'm just thinking specifically right now off the top of my head. I was thinking, okay, Rasul Douglas, I know they tried to put him out there on the market. Nobody wanted him. Is it possible that teams down the road might lose players due to COVID-19 and then someone like Rasul Douglas is now valuable to other guys?
Yeah, Hunter, the only problem with trading Rasul Douglas, so the Eagles tried to during the draft, they just couldn't move him, is they only have 9 cornerbacks on the roster right now. Now, yeah, we don't have the preseason where you really need to have probably 9, 10, or 11. But let's face it, Prince Smith, Jaquette, who's also an undrafted free agent, Craig James, they're long shots to make the team. The only guys that are really certain to make the team are Avonte Maddox, Darius Slay, Nickel Roby-Coleman, Sidney Jones, and Crayvon LeBlanc. They're 5. Now, I don't know if they'll keep 6. And look, Rasul Douglas will certainly be available, but you got to make sure you get through training camp in one piece. Now, later, when you set your initial 53-man roster, sure, you could look to move him. You'll literally take anything. A future 7th-round pick that's conditional, you'll take that. But it's hard to move guys right now because you just don't know what you have without an off-season as well as no preseason.
We know Howie Roseman has a history of making moves, whether it's adding guys via free agency or trade. So, with the roster as is, what other moves could you see the Eagles make, knowing Howie's history?
Yeah, so Josh, here's the way I look at it. Right now, there doesn't seem to be a necessity to add a veteran receiver. I'm not saying they won't. Running back is probably their biggest need right now, in back of Miles Sanders. Yeah, they have 6 of them on their roster right now, which is, by the way, at 81. But 3 of them are undrafted free agents from the last 2 seasons. Michael Warren and Adrian Killinger are from this season, and Elijah Holyfield was an undrafted free agent last year. So without that veteran behind Sanders, you could call Corey Clement a veteran, but I remember he's had a significant injury history. He's coming off of shoulder surgery, as I understand it. So I would remember, as I reported, a couple months ago, that they wanted Carlos Hyde. That just didn't work out because he wanted too much money. Devontae Freeman wants too much money. And now remember, guys, with the Chiefs losing Damian Williams, who's technically their starting running back, the Chiefs have to add a veteran there, you would think. Then the other position would be, to me, the linebacker. They could certainly use a veteran. There's no question that's up for competition's sake. Defensive end right now, guys, this is a little bit of a surprise to me. Right now, Josh Sweat is their 3rd DN. I know Mosher had reported about Vinny Curry potentially signing with the Eagles. That has not obviously happened yet. The Eagles want to look at Jannard Avery, who they acquired last year, if you recall from the Browns the trade deadline for a 4th-round pick. So they're also, that's another position, guys. They have very little experience behind Barnett and Graham.
Was it shocking to you that someone like Deshaun Hall was cut?
No, because he was coming back from ACL reconstruction. He would not have made the team. It's funny. He had the incredible preseason, but really had been a major disappointment as a former 3rd-round pick. He had bounced around a little bit and been on and off roster. So the guy that the Eagles want to compete, and he's healthy, that's why he's not on PUP, is Joe Osman. Osman has been this story that he's been sort of a phenomenon, an all-season superstar, but he tore his ACL last summer. But he's ready to go, so it really should be when you look at DN, Barnett, Graham, Avery, Sweat, Sharif Miller, and Osman. They'll probably keep 6 DNs. Right now, Casey Toohill, who they like, would be on the outside looking in.
Adam Caplan joining us here, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast here on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you're following him on Twitter at Caplan NFL. Adam, also in terms of the roster moves, I'm curious, how is the impact of no preseason? You're basically going to have a training workout ramp up to actually getting on the field and getting in pad work. So how is the peculiar timing of how this training camp is going to impact some of these moves as well?
Yeah, they have to, Josh, the coaches and executives, they've just got to figure out what this thing's going to look like. Because when talking to coaches, they're just not going to have a lot of patience with younger players, particularly the guys 5th round, 6th round, and 7th round. Just the timing of it, you only have 2.5 weeks of training camp. Then you're preparing for your first regular season game. The Eagles will play at Washington in week 1. So it is tough. There's no doubt. I mean, the timing is not good here. They're just not. We're on August here in 2 days, and you're not going to have any practices. All you can do as walkthroughs and conditioning work. The coach is telling me this is basically going to be phase 1 of training camp. It's going to be 2 weeks. It's just like your OTAs phase 1. There are no practices. So all in all, guys, this is not going to be good for really what football should look like in the fall. I think it's going to be not great football for at least the first few weeks.
How do you personally feel about the no-bubble environment working out? We're seeing with the NBA, no positive tests, which is tremendous. NHL is doing well, although they're in a different country. Baseball's having a little bit of a hiccup. So, how do you personally feel about the no-bubble environment working out for football?
Well, it's interesting, Hunter. If you look at the NBA, I guess a couple players, I think Lou Williams and maybe some others, didn't quite when they were allowed to leave the bubble. They unfortunately went somewhere where they're not supposed to. But that's the key to this thing. And some of the players have already talked about it. Bobby Wagner, the middle linebacker for the Seahawks, has talked about it as well. You got to kind of go home. You're allowed to go if you want to go out with friends. You can, but you have to socially distance. You got to wear a mask, and you can't be around a big crowd. The concern you get is with the rookies, and the young guys. We all wanted to go out in our early 20s, and you got to just give it up for 4 months. You just got to do it. Once the season starts, you got to just study your playbook, not go out. The veterans are smart enough to know, hey, look, I know what I'm dealing with. And the one thing we didn't really talk much about is the level of opt-outs. Man, I am surprised at the level of opt-outs. By the time we're done here, we could get 75 to 100 players opting out, and some of those key players are going to be impactful. Eddie Goldman is probably the top player right now who's opted out. He is one of the best players on the Bears, and that's a big loss for the Chicago Bears this season.
You were talking about the rookies who may go out. What kind of impact can those NFL restrictions have where they're saying you can't go certain places with X number of people, you can't be indoors? There's the potential that guys could maybe even be suspended or lose game checks. Yeah,
it could be fine. You're looking at fines. Josh, that's a small deterrent, but because the players are very worried, I've talked to some players, and I've talked to a lot of agents, and here's another thing I want to add with the players. Several agents have told me that the players that have opted out are concerned for 2 reasons. Actually, 3 reasons. The big one is obviously if they have a health issue. They have asthma or sickle cell or something that would prevent them from flying, or just an underlying health issue, or one they've had for their career or their life. But the big one also is if you have a child on the way or you already have children, young children, and you just don't want to expose them to some potential. Now, I've talked to coaches already in their buildings around the NFL, and They said the protocols are unbelievably stringent. They just can't understand how anyone could get the virus in their building. And by the way, one little note that I didn't talk about on Inside the Birds, but I could certainly update you guys on. It's interesting. So coaches now are wearing a tracker, and what happens is, the personnel guys as well, if you get too close, if you get within 6 feet, the COVID tracker makes a noise and it warns you, hey, you need to socially distance better. And by the way, there are cameras everywhere in every building. Everyone has to wear masks unless they're in their office and nobody's in there.
That's very interesting, because I was going to ask you, is there a way for the league to make these players feel way more comfortable to the point where they won't opt out? Because it's definitely concerning for the league to hear all of these guys. You see the Patriots, I mean, they're losing them by the day, It seems, how many people are opting out there. So, how much more can they do to make these players feel like it's okay to go play football?
I think they've done a great job. The NFLPA's doctor has okayed all the protocols. That has been agreed upon. So that's a good thing. I mean, look, it's concerning when you're outside the building, but inside the building, as one coach told me this morning, he said, I would struggle to find a cleaner building in the world, not just the National Football League, which tells you that they're doing everything the right way in cleaning buildings and distancing and wearing masks. So that's a good thing. And hopefully going forward, at least when players are practicing, we don't have any more reports of players testing positive.
He's Adam Caplan. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Caplan NFL. The Inside the Birds podcast drops every Monday and Thursday morning. Make sure you subscribe. Check out all the great information Adam and Jeff have on there. And as all guests, Adam appeared today on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Adam, I appreciate the time.
Guys, thank you.